Tol, alisin mo nga muna yung gitara dyan ng maupuan. Ikaw naman kung gitara ka kasi hindi yung ano eh. Mamaya ka kasi.
Iskul Bukol, the rise and fall of the 1970s campus comedy. If you grew up in the Philippines in the late 1970s and 1980s, just hearing the words Wanbol was enough to make you smile. Iskul Bukol was more than a TV show, it was a shared cultural joke, a chaotic campus universe where the students were always one step ahead of the adults. The show aired on IBC 13, a network closely tied to the political and media power of the Marcos family, and it quickly became a launchpad for careers and a mirror of Filipino youth culture. But behind the laughter and the fast-paced gags, there were real tensions, cast changes, and personal stories that shaped its rise and fall. The heart of the show was a trio who became the face of the series. Tito Sotto as Tito Escalera, Vic Sotto as Vic Ungasis, and Joey De Leon as Joey Escalera. On screen, the writers built the idea that Tito and Joey were Escalera brothers, while Vic Ungasis was their sometimes bullied, always exasperated classmate stuck in the middle of their antics. The whole family setup was pure sitcom fiction created for the show. The magic came from the fact that, off-screen, the three had already worked together for years, which gave their chemistry a brother-like feel even though they were just close professional partners. Around them stood the adults who tried, and always failed, to keep order. The sharpest of them all was Meli Tagasa as Miss Tapia, the long-suffering teacher whose frustration and comic timing kept the class scenes grounded. Other recurring faces included Ritchie D. Horsey as Ritchie, Bing Angelis as Mang Temi, Jimmy Santos as Big J, Redford White, Bibeth Orteza, Anthony Raquel as Tonette Macho, and a host of supporting actors whose names became part of the show's comic DNA. One of the most unforgettable comic mothers was Deliatea Tayan, who played the nosy, scene-stealing Inong or Aling Yacoba, always barging into Wanbol with her own little drama. Every time she pointed her finger at one of the troublemakers, her shrill, high-pitched shout of "Si Bunsoy" became an instant catchphrase, echoing across living rooms and school corridors. That single line, so simple and so exaggerated, is still one of the first things many fans remember when they talk about Iskul Bukol, a reminder of how the show turned minor moments into national jokes. Running the madness behind the scenes was director Bert De Leon, a veteran of Philippine comedy who knew how to pace visual gags and keep energy high while still giving the cast space to improvise. The show's institutional backer was IBC 13, and in many showbiz histories, Amy Marcos is cited as the key executive or producer figure behind Iskul Bukol and other TVJ projects. She didn't appear on screen, but her influence over the network and its talent decisions helped the show stay on air for years. Because it aired on IBC 13, Iskul Bukol became a magnet for guest stars. Teen idol Sharon Cuneta appeared in multiple episodes as Sharon Escalera, the younger sister of the fictional Escalera brothers Tito and Joey, giving the family scenes a domestic heartbeat that went beyond campus jokes. Other guests included Rod Navarro, who played Don Jose Escalera, the father figure of the Escalera family.
Sumati ka na, baka sakali mawalang katorpehan mo.
Bakit? Sino torpe?
Within the student cast, one of the quieter but very memorable presences was Mary, the sweet, soft-spoken girl who often appeared as Vic Ungasis' love interest. Mary's shy, gentle persona made her a good foil to the loud, chaotic world around her, and for a while, her character became a recurring emotional beat in the show's romantic subplots. But over time, the producers decided to rework Vic's romantic arc. Mary's character quietly faded out of the series, with fewer and fewer appearances until she effectively disappeared from the main storylines. In her place, the show brought in a new, more dynamic love interest for Vic, Joey Albert, a singer and actress whose sharper delivery and musical background gave their scenes a different flavor. For longtime viewers, the shift from Mary to Joey Albert marked a subtle but clear change in the show's tone, from understated sweetness to a more polished, entertainment-centered love story. But even as the show tried to refresh its cast, its core supporting players also began to change. Two of the most memorable characters, Ritchie D. Horsey and Redford White, eventually drifted away from the main lineup, and their departures were quietly but deeply felt by longtime viewers. For Ritchie D. Horsey, the story behind his exit is tied to the pressures of juggling multiple worlds at once. During his time on Iskul Bukol and later on TODAS, television's outrageously delightful all-star show, Ritchie was already involved in live stage and music-style comedy venues, often working late at night after long days of taping. Behind-the-scenes accounts suggest that the grind of a sitcom combined with the temptations and fatigue of the late-night entertainment scene began to take its toll on him. Fans and insiders remember how the early strain of the lifestyle made it harder for him to keep up with the show's schedule. Over time, the producers had to adjust his role, and Ritchie gradually faded out of the main cast.
Hawitin mo at isasayaw ko. Hawitin mo.
His absence removed a key part of the show's rhythm, the high-pitched, neurotic comic foil who once balanced the trio's calmer, more grounded antics. Redford White's situation was different but just as pivotal. During the height of Iskul Bukol, Redford was fast becoming a top-billed movie star in his own right. His own films and leading roles were pulling him in a different direction, and the timing often clashed with the show's fixed taping days. Producers gradually reduced his appearances, letting his character drift out of the regular rotation. Some cast members reduced their roles or drifted away, including Ritchie and later others, as network executives tried to keep the brand alive by bringing in younger actors, new comic characters, and revolving guest stars. But the chemistry that had once felt effortless started to look forced. By the mid-1980s, another problem became obvious: the cast was aging. The original trio, along with key figures like Jimmy Santos, and the remaining veterans, were no longer the teenagers or young adults they pretended to be. School uniforms and naive student attitudes began to look out of place on faces that had clearly lived through more than campus pranks. Newer revivals and reboots in the 2000s and 2010s tried to reboot the franchise with younger actors, including Kiempi de Leon and others, but longtime viewers complained that the new cast lacked the timing, spontaneity, and balance of the original three. The show's efforts to feel fresh only emphasized how much the original magic depended on a very specific mix of personalities, a specific in-universe family unit, the fictional Escalera brothers, and their classmate Vic played by Vic Sotto, and a very specific era. Over time, these factors, the aging cast, the loss of key players like Ritchie D. Horsey, Redford White, and softer characters like Mary, the behind-the-scenes disputes, the show's ties to off-screen controversies, and the changing comedic landscape all contributed to Iskul Bukol's decline. Newer formats, teen dramas, and music-driven programs began to dominate viewers' attention. The kind of broad, slapstick campus humor that had once felt rebellious began to dominate viewers' attention. The kind of broad, slapstick campus humor that had once felt rebellious began to feel outdated, even jarring, as social norms shifted. The network tried to revive the concept in different forms, but the 1970s version of Iskul Bukol remained the one that most fans remember, the era when the trio, the faculty, the Escalera family, the running girl Bunsoy, and the IBC 13 platform all came together in a way that felt both chaotic and perfectly in sync. Today, Iskul Bukol lives on as a piece of nostalgia and a case study in how a sitcom can become more than a TV show. It can become a cultural touchstone, a political backdrop, and, in some ways, a reminder that fame is rarely as simple or as pure as it looks on screen. For many Filipinos, the show still represents a specific time in their lives. The school hours, the after-school TV, the shared jokes with classmates, the dramatic Escalera family moments, and the unforgettable echo of Atayan shouting, "Si Bunsoy." For the cast, it represents both the peak of their youth comedy years and the beginning of a long, complicated journey through the ups and downs of Philippine entertainment. The full story of Iskul Bukol is not just laughter and catchphrases, it's also ambition, power, and the price of staying in the spotlight just a little too long. Iskul Bukol is not just a regular sitcom, it's a cultural time capsule, a shared memory of an entire generation. If you enjoyed this look back at the show's rise, its cast, and its messy, unforgettable legacy, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know which Iskul Bukol character or gag you still remember the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.